recording. And again, thank you to our panelists for being here today to talk more about how to stand out on Handshake, specifically from the recruiter perspective. So first I'll have our panelists introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about them and their company. And then from there, we'll dive into some questions. But like I said, this is really about your questions today for our folks in the audience to learn as much as you can about Handshake and questions that you have. So we'll start with Amanda. Just tell us a little bit more about you and your organization.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be on with you guys today. My name is Amanda Wolver. I'm the Divisional Sales Manager for Team Heart with the company TTI. So in case you haven't heard of TTI before, we love to say that we're one of the largest companies you've never heard of. Last year, we completed the year with about $10 billion in sales, all from the companies that we own. So we own brands like Milwaukee Tools, Ryobi Tools, Hoover, Dirt Devil, Auric. I work for Hart, which is our brand new brand that's exclusive to Walmart, all selling cordless power tools, basically. So we hire a ton of people right into a leadership development program. We have a ton of different ones. We have the primary one is focused on sales management and marketing, but we also have an engineering leadership development program, a finance and accounting, legal. We've pretty much got it all. We found that it works really well to get people in. So we utilize Handshake a ton because we hire a ton of brand new people right off of college campuses. So that's a little bit about me and my organization.
Thanks so much, Amanda. Next, we have Jeff Mays, and Jeff, tell us a little about you and your organization.
Yeah, hey everyone, this is Jeff Mays. I'm the CEO and founder of Quinsight, and unlike Amanda, we are a small tech startup, so I don't quite have as much revenue as she does, but maybe next year we can get to the billions. We work in healthcare, so we service providers and health systems around the country, helping them take advantage of their information and hopefully improve patient care, improve administrative cost, lots of different ways to help out back there. I'm not a traditional recruiter. I'm the founder of a tech company, but as we grow, finding good talent is critical, especially talent that comes out of school ready to go. So I'm looking forward to the conversation today and see where it goes.
Great, thanks, Jeff. And we also have Terrence Hairston. Terrence, tell us a little about you and your organization.
Yes, excited just like Jeff and Amanda to be here, speak to everybody. I represent Ally Financial. So we're a financial company based out of Detroit, Michigan. We have some large presences in Charlotte as well. So that's where I'm based out of the Charlotte area. I've been with Ally for about 10 years now. I've seen a lot of changes, probably about the time I just started. We're really just we're probably like the youngest, oldest company in the world, at least in the US. We started off as GMAC, where we rebranded to Ally back in 08. So a lot of new branding, but the biggest thing we're all about is doing right by our customers. So that's probably one of the takeaways I'll probably take from this session, even when you're on your Handshake profile, is make sure you're true to yourself, and make sure that you're representing yourself and what you're trying to bring in the world or whatnot. So we're really big on that, real big social impact, diversity organization. So yeah, talk more about that a little bit later on, I guess, in the QA part of it. But yeah, excited to talk to everybody.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that.
Well, I guess I was gonna say, John, I'm a role at Ally in addition to my day-to-day. So I have my day-to-day role, but I'm also the campus engagement lead for UNC Chapel Hill. So you'll probably see my name in certain events or whatnot. So yeah, definitely. Nice to meet everybody. Sorry about that.
No problem. I can tell from the Daily Tar Heel in the back in your hat that you're definitely engaged with you.
Yeah, I guess that was the only thing I need to put in there. I'm alumni 05, so I got my alumni hat on. I got my Carolina, my championship from West End, I think. That's the 16, I think, or 15. Last one we had. 17, I'll say
yeah.
Yep. We still got more recent than Duke has one, so that's always
right.
how I like to tell everybody. So.
That's really what matters.
That's all that matters. I don't even care what year it is, as long as we got one since he's had one. So.
I like the way you think. Well, we'll actually start with you with this first question. So tell me a little bit about, you hit on this a little bit already. How does your organization, how does Ally use Handshake in the recruiting process?
Yeah, so Handshake's key. So we do most of our initial touch base with students via Handshake. So we use it as that entryway to access and see students who might have some interest within the company. We put our postings out there for our job list and put our job listings out there. And then from there, we route them to our official site in order to apply, just because we need that official record for all employees to go through that official process. But yeah, it's their initial gateway in our preferred method, actually to engage with students and find out their interest into Ally.
Great. And Amanda, what about for you all?
Absolutely. We do similar things. We post our jobs on there, as well as, get involved in as many different events just like this that a lot of times are hosted through Handshake. And then one of the other ones I like to mention is that we try to utilize the ambassador seats that we have to also do messaging. So Handshake has cool abilities to send messages to tons of students that fit different qualifications. So if we're targeting, maybe UNC juniors who are looking for a sales internship, we can kind of put those filters and send out messages as well. So same thing, it's really great for that kind of initial communication. And then we typically transfer the conversation onto different platforms and get them into our job boards as well.
Great. And Jeff, I imagine that, I don't know, I'm curious to see what you say, because it could be different as a tech startup, how to use Handshake for your organization.
Yeah, it is a little different. So we're based in Chapel Hill, so just down the street from UNC, and we're up to about a dozen or so employees now. So what we have found is that we've gone from 1 to a dozen in a couple of years, and we're hoping to double the size of our company this next year. And while we don't have to be local, it's great when you have UNC, NC State, and that school in Durham to recruit against, right? So you have them that talent available, especially being in healthcare. There's a lot of talented individuals around the area. So what it allows us is to do, even as a small company, is to get our presence known and to kind of feel what's out there. Our last 2 hires from the summer, one was from NC State, one was from UNC, and one was an intern with us prior to us hiring it. So again, it's just a great way for us to kind of leverage UNC and the other local colleges to see what talent's out there and hopefully get our name in front of people, since we definitely are a name people don't easily know.
Great point. Yeah, I think that's really actually important to know, is that there's so many different companies that are in Handshake. And so while there are going to be big brand names that you may have heard about, there's a whole range of companies, large, even mid-size, and then smaller, like yours, Jeff, that have great opportunities. So something important to keep in mind as you're exploring opportunities. Really good point. And Jeff, do you look at student profiles in Handshake? And if so, what types of things do you look for or kind of key on?
Yeah, I mean, I think what Terrence said earlier about being true to yourself is really key. I'm sure we would all love to have, straight A's and all the fancy majors and all the extracurricular activities on there. But really, who we hire is a person. And when we talk to people, whether they're new grads or experienced people, I want it to be a conversation. I want that person to be comfortable with who they are and what they've done. So to me, when I'm looking in Handshake, sure, certain majors lend better to tech companies, but really what I'm looking for is someone who's well-rounded and who's, kind of shown some maturity and completeness in what they've done, right? And it's hard on just looking at Handshake just to get that. But again, I would encourage you to put on your volunteer things, your activities, your athletics, your sports, your jobs, because all of that to me helps round out the picture of kind of who I'm talking to in that first conversation.
Great, really good points there. Amanda, other thoughts on that in terms of what you look for in the profile?
Yeah, absolutely. I love when it kind of mirrors what I would expect to see on a resume. So similar things, kind of those experiences, all the things you're involved with. One thing that's nice about Handshake is you can almost kind of blend your LinkedIn into it as well, by having that professional photo on there, your different experiences. And I think it's a really nice application. Some of the things that I look for when I'm looking through is kind of similar to what Jeff is saying, would love to see your experience in a well-rounded experience, not just in one thing. But the things that really stand out to me are leadership and proven success. So I think there's a ton of different ways that you can get really great experiences. But if you're able to include that great GPA that you've maintained, or a great experience that has transformed from an internship to a role that you're able to maintain during the school year, or you joined an organization as just a general member and then later on became an executive, a VP, a president, all of those things to showcase that when you take on a task, you're going to go above and beyond and really try to push yourself to the next level within whatever that organization, task, or even job might be.
Really excellent points. Other thoughts about that, Terrence?
I think Jeff and Amanda pretty much put everything on the button on that one. I would say, yeah, definitely your LinkedIn profile, link to that if you have any professional sites you want to link to. I would say headshot is important. A picture is great. Initially makes you be able to have identify with somebody. Any kind of headline that you can put on. I think they give you the option to have a summary. So anything you could put there is kind of eye-catching as far as your headline. That would be great. But this is probably something that doesn't even need to be said, but just grammar and spelling is important. So, treat it as the first sign everybody sees you. So just, take that as important. I mean, it goes a long way that you can convey. And I mean, even if you're not saying a whole lot, just make sure it's clear and concise where someone can actually understand it. That's going to go a long way. So.
Yeah, really good point there. I mean, I think we're all so busy, right? And I know students and alumni at UNC are all super busy too. And so it is good just as a reminder that this is, like you said, Terrence, the first time that somebody is potentially seeing your experiences, your professional brand, those types of things. So to really take care with that and have potentially have other people take a look at it as well. Yep. So Mohammed has a great question that we can dive into right now. Kind of a follow-up, I think, for Jeff, of what aspects of Handshake's profile show maturity, and is it? We'll come back to that. So is it the level of experience we have, jobs and internships completed, or are there other things that where you can really demonstrate that?
Again, it's tough when it's just like a screen like that, but I think Terrence's point about grammar and spelling, I mean, it's exactly right. I mean, I was assuming that, but thank you for saying that, because you're right. That definitely tells a level of maturity. I think it varies. We all have our own backgrounds and histories, so it's not like it's a one size fits all. Seeing someone that was able to work while in school, to me is important. I'm sure everyone else would agree that I'm married with kids and a full-time job, and I've got my MBA after school. Like, life's all about juggling multiple things at one time. So being able to show that ability to be an athlete and be at school or work at a job and get good grades, to me, those things start putting those pieces together. Nothing's going to replace that conversation you have, but I do like seeing those kind of aspects put together.
That's great. Yeah, really good points. And just to echo something Amanda said too, if there are opportunities where let's say you're in a student organization and you were a member one year and now you've moved up into the executive committee and then even maybe to a vice president or president role, things like that, that's a great way to show a progression of responsibility and through that, the different things that you accomplished. And then I think beyond Handshake, when you get, like you said, Jeff, it's kind of hard with the initial piece. you can see people's experiences and see this to an extent. It's really in the interview where you can then start to talk about, here's what I learned, or here's how I grew, and this is why this was meaningful or important to me. So all these things that we talk about, whether it's Handshake, whether it's a resume, cover letter, interviewing, it's all connected, right? It's different ways of telling your story. So something to think about for down the road. And we actually are going to be talking about more about, well, actually, we talked about interviewing, I think, last time, our last meetup. So that video is on our site if you want to check that out more. Yeah, and then Emma asked a great question about any suggestions or guidelines for the headshot. I know, Terrence, you were talking about that some. Do you have additional thoughts or guidelines about that piece?
Yeah, I think one that jumps out is make sure it's appropriate. It's going to be appropriate dress. It doesn't have to be a professional. Everybody knows you're a student, so it doesn't have to be a professional headshot. But something where it's focuses on pretty much your top part and your shoulder and above. I mean, I would think of like a general passport type of photo. But I mean, just a smile is important. It's good. So I mean, it's always good to put in that smiling face. But yeah, I would say the most important part would be to make sure you're dressed appropriately. Is the lighting's good, and a smile doesn't hurt. Is my first thing I would put there. Good
Definitely, it's probably industry specific too, Amanda. Right? Like it probably depends on what area you're focusing on.
I would probably assume, even just from like profiles I see on LinkedIn, I'm primarily focused on like sales, marketing, and management. So it could even be like a businessy top, nothing that's crazy revealing, or or a shirtless bikini or picture from the beach or anything like that, right? Like keeping it as professional as you can. I don't think it needs to be like, exactly what Terrence was saying, a specific headshot that you had. But I think with the capabilities of our phones these days, I'm sure you can even set up kind of a self timer and get a pretty great one kind of from maybe the shoulders up or so. But yeah, I mean, I think that if you're somebody that's going into something where you're going to be white coat, right? A PA, a doctor, orthodontist, something like that, I'm sure you wear your white coat. A little bit outside of my realm. But I also think that, if you have a nice, polo from a work thing, or even like your university or something like that, I think that's all acceptable as well. And people do understand that you're a student, but I think the more that you can put like a little bit of intention into it, the better it's going to showcase. And, even just setting up a timer and doing one yourself, or having your roommate or your friend take one, I think is great, even compared to where you can kind of tell you cropped yourself out of a picture with some other friends and you see other people's shoulders or whatever else it might be.
Great. Yeah, great thoughts there. There's a lot of backdrops on campus outside too, right? Whether doesn't have to be, but the well or different spots around campus where you can do that, and just with a phone and a friend and get that up and running. The smile piece, there's been research on that, to Terrence's point, that when people see a smile in a profile photo like that, they perceive you as more approachable, and so there is a lot of that is a added value, so something to think about. And then the last thing I was going to say about the profile in general. So for our virtual career fairs, and we're doing everything virtually for this semester, pretty much and they're all on Handshake. You have to have your profile filled out to then participate in those fairs. So make sure that you're doing that. This is really important. So there's a couple of other thoughts. Great. Well, let's move to the next question. And Jeff, I'm interested from your perspective as a CEO. How is diversity and inclusion important to your company, and how can candidates demonstrate an inclusive mindset in their Handshake profile, or really in general?
Yeah, I mean, it's critical. I think it's critical to all businesses in the country. As a small company, a small startup, it's something that we've been challenged with, because to be as frank and honest as possible, the people that I have worked with and been with look a lot like me, right? Share my same thoughts, have the same background, right? Which is fine, but that's not how you grow as a company. It's not how you grow as a person. It's not how you add value to your clients. And so I think one thing that I am focused on, and my whole team is really focused on, is making sure that we foster a culture and a company that is inclusive, and that it's not just a tagline on the website. You know, it actually needs to mean something. I don't know if I have any great wisdoms about how to showcase that on Handshake, right? I mean, I definitely wouldn't shy away from things of your culture that you think are significant and meaningful that would be interesting to share for a recruitment. So that's a tough one, right? I think it's so critical to the success of Quinsight, of our community, of our country. It's obviously a challenge right now that we face, and you know, I don't know if I have amazing insight on Jonathan, other than I know it's important, and we're trying our best to help out with it. Hopefully, Amanda and Terrence have maybe some more insightful comments on that one.
I think that was very insightful and important to hear, especially, you know, as a founder in a unique situation of building your company from the ground up. Yeah, Terrence, other thoughts on that piece in terms of you know, how you might be able to demonstrate an inclusive mindset in Handshake, or just
Yeah, I think it goes down to you know, with the theme we've kind of said at the beginning is showing your true self, right? So I mean, those groups that you're passionate about, those groups that you're involved with, definitely include that on your profile. Don't shy away from those. You know, put that out there. That'll definitely show things that you're interested in. It'll show, you know, without even you attempting to show your level of diversity. You know, and just having those, you know, different experiences, you know, that's what makes us who we are, right? That's what makes us the individuals that we are, our differences and our experiences. At Ally, we're very big on diversity and inclusion. We have 8 different affinity groups or employer resource groups to represent various groups. One of the groups we have is our Pride group. And one of their taglines they use is we're united by our differences. And I think by putting that type of information on your profiles, that what makes you unique and your passions in support of those, I think that can't do anything but make your profile stronger.
Excellent. Yeah, Amanda, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just kind of echoing the things that you've already said. I don't know if I have a ton of novel ideas, but I think the biggest part is, you know, if it is something you're passionate about and it is something that you do embody and you do bring to the table, I think your experience and your involvement in different organizations is gonna speak to that the best, right? Like if you're actually really committed to it, we're gonna see that in some of the different things you're involved with, right? I think other things to just kind of mention when you're talking about like how to pull from different experiences you're in or the different organizations you're in that I think also might show kind of more of your commitment to diversity and inclusion is going to be anytime you can really speak to the teamwork side of things you're doing or like the cross collaboration things that you're doing to really make, you know, connect different people, cultures, groups, or even just when you're organizing, maybe this is one more in an interview question versus something you can add to your handshake, but, you know, being able to speak to the different types of groups you're working with and being able to really connect all people and, you know, unify one decision that you're able to make or something like that. Once again, a little bit more challenging to put on, you know, a resume or on your handshake profile, but something that if you're really practicing it and really doing it, we're going to be able to see it and learn it when we're talking to you.
Well, that actually sounds really concrete, actually, right? And so what you're getting to is yes, there's the philosophy, and yes, there's the values and how I show up and my identities that bring. There's also the skills in terms of communication and how you connect with people and how you can articulate and share that in the profile. I think, yeah, really good points there. So got some other really good questions, and keep these questions coming because from doing a lot of these discussions, I know that you're not the only one who has these questions. So it really is great for everybody to share. So are there any immediate turnoffs or red flags that you notice on some profiles? And Amanda, we'll go back to you for that. Any things, it could be Handshake specific, or even, this is related, LinkedIn or even a resume? Any immediate turnoffs or red flags?
Yeah, good question. I think that actually going back to something that Jeff mentioned earlier was actually kind of seeing that whole picture is super important. So while I don't think it's an immediate like red flag or something that like makes me completely turn away from looking at a profile or a resume, I think it does help us understand when you can see a full story. So whenever you have a big gap on your resume, maybe it says that, you were a student, you're currently a student, you had one job, you were involved in an organization, and then all of a sudden for 2 years, it seems like there's nothing going on and we don't really understand kind of what you were doing during that time. That's something that I might highlight, maybe more of a yellow flag than a red flag, just to get some more questions or, try to understand what you were doing during that time. I can't think of really any like major thing other than I think like some of the things that were mentioned earlier, horrible grammar or just not things, or maybe, using your points that they don't really make sense or they're not easy to follow. That's about the only things I can really think of. It's really the effort, right? We want to see the effort that you're putting into things. And if you're really putting it in and you're coming up with, really great things that you've done and showcasing that in a fluid way that makes sense to us, I think that's the best thing you can do.
Right. Yeah, Terrence, thoughts on that?
I think for me, the whole thing is all about balance. So you could either have too much information on your profile, and you can have not enough, right? You put not enough in there, you have a lot of question mark. Everybody, you're all are students here at UNC, so you had a great profile in order to get in. So you already know about time management. So if you're putting this into your Handshake profile and there's not much meat there, it's wondering like, what have you really been doing while you've been in your students? That 4.0 looks great, but if there's not anything else there, really, like, what are we looking at here? In the same point, if you just see a resume that's just chocked with everything in the world, and there's like, you're just putting down bullet points, just be putting down bullet points. One thing is going to be tough for that recruiter to really pinpoint and look through what's really important in that information. But at the same time, it could be viewed as some kind of filler for some other reason. So that's why I say it's all about balance, being able to convey what's really important to you, what's the most significant pieces about you, without going into way too much information. That's kind of a red flag for me.
Yeah, so maybe going into really significant experiences in depth rather than feeling like you have to put everything in anything that you've done.
Yeah, it's more about quality than quantity more than anything else. You have to, it's good to put, if you have a lot of experiences, that's great. But at the same time, there's some that are going to be more pertinent and more applicable to what you're trying to do next, or even what you're trying to apply for. A lot of times you might have multiple resumes. It's kind of hard to do with a profile, but within your profile, just trying to gear it down into like, if this is the first snapshot that anybody gets to see of you and never gets to see anything else about you, just go ahead and put that in there, instead of just trying to put everything that there's anything possible that you can think of for yourself. So.
Great points. Yeah, Jeff, any other red flags for you?
I would disagree with what they said. Effort, how I view it sometimes is if I saw, your name with Quinsight after it, being an employee on my team, would I be proud of that content, right? Do I want the person who created that content, took time and effort to do that, do I want them a part of my team? Right? So making sure that you're right, it's not just a bunch of fluff, it's not nothing, right? This is your life, this is your career, this is your billboard, right? If you can't promote it, if you can't get excited by it, if you can't showcase why it's something special, we can't do that for you either, right? So I think it's important. Then if I can go off topic with one item too is, sometimes there's that pressure of I got to put down amazing internships and like a tour of the world, and I've saved whales from the Gulf Coast, right? And all these amazing things out there. Again, going back to Terrence's comment about being yourself, is be yourself, right? And I have a 17-year-old daughter who's in high school, and it has been extremely mentally challenging for all of us, right? But for her, the last year and a half. And I don't think you need to have this feeling of, oh my goodness, I have to just fill space, right? COVID's been crazy hard for everybody out there. And so what I'm looking for as an employer is someone who's real about that, right? And I'm okay if you didn't save the world last year, because COVID was mentally challenging and hard at home, right? So to kind of go upon what the other two were saying is be true to yourself, put the effort in. And I think if you do that, you're going to be drawn to people who like that, right? And those are the kind of companies I think you want to work for.
Yeah, really excellent points there for sure. And something I see a good amount over the years being a career coach here at UNC is sometimes folks need to give yourself a little bit more credit, and not even realizing how the significance of what you're doing, the impact of what you're doing, and even the volume of what you're doing as well. So yeah, I think sometimes just having that conversation with somebody else, to whether that's, it doesn't have to be one of our team, but it can be, and really looking and saying, wow, okay, yeah, here are the things that not only I've done, but that I'm proud of, and that I'm excited to share, or ways that you've grown, to Jeff's point, that maybe that you scale back what you were doing, but there are a lot of things that you took away from that you can contribute and bring in terms of your mindset, approach, and skill set to an organization. So yeah, great points there. And then, so we have a quick question about work authorization and what you consider. I imagine that this is similar for each of your organizations, but I don't want to assume. And we could always have a follow-up directly for this question, because it is an important one. So I'm guessing that you all require authorization to work in the U.S. Amanda, is that correct for you all?
Yes, that is correct.
It's correct here as well.
Yep, us too.
Great. And so we can I could follow up directly after the call to talk more about resources that are available. So for international students, you have access to the International Student and Scholar Services Office, that you can talk to them and connect directly with them about different programs that are set up for practical work and experiences, OPT, CPT, and so we won't go into all of those details today, but yeah, follow up with me if you have questions. Really, yeah, very good point. Some companies are not aware of OPT and CPT, so you may have to do some advocating or be selective in that, but we can definitely follow up if you have more questions, or even schedule a time to meet after the call. So, well, we've been talking, time is flying by, so it's almost 4:40 already. So I'm looking for other questions in the chat. If there are things that we have not covered so far that you want to make sure that we talk about, now is the time. So keep putting those questions in the chat. I have one more to kind of keep us going forward, and it's about email etiquette. So tell us a little bit about best practices for etiquette and messaging with employers on Handshake. And really that could go for Handshake, but it could also go for emailing with a recruiter as well. So Amanda, what are your thoughts on that? Even again, things to avoid doing, because that's something that comes up a lot, or that we think about, because communicating with a recruiter on Handshake is different than, we're not texting, right? A friend or something like that. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. I would say overall, it's better to err on the side of caution, and to err on the side of even more, professional, or even more tidied up than you might be with I would say keep it in line with maybe how you would talk to a professor, or maybe even higher. I know I had some professors that wanted you to call them by their first names and things like that. And I think we're getting even more to a world where that's extremely acceptable for sure. But remember that, especially as employers, we have such a short amount of time that we're interacting with you, right? Even if you go through an interview process collectively, maybe it's, let's just say 3 or 4 hours of interviews max, right? All split up. So I think the more that you can carry yourself in the best light, and the best that you can you can explain or showcase or demonstrate that you're going to be professional, whether you're talking to somebody who is an employer, somebody who might not even be following that exact same professional level, or anything like that. That's also going to show that you're going to be able to do that when you're talking to other coworkers or customers if you're client facing and different things like that. So I think it's best to err on that side of caution and just try to be professional and be thoughtful with the words you're saying. Because the little things are going to be what we remember, and so you don't want that to be a mistake or a typo or even just not a completely thought through question or response. So just the better and the tighter knit you can be with it, I think the better it is. Now, I do think it's still okay to show your personality. Don't think you need to be completely, stuffy, buttoned up, but I feel like, you can save that for more of the phone call conversations and interviews to be able to really show a little bit more of your personality.
Very good. Yeah, Jeff, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I'm a pretty laid back guy as well, but you just never know what you're going to run across. So I agree with Amanda. I would keep it pretty professional those first few times. And again, you can have your personality show after that. But yeah, I completely agree with what Amanda was saying.
Great. And Terrence, anything else to add on that one?
Yeah, I think Amanda did a great job of putting out there for everything. I think it goes back to, I don't want to say be short and sweet. Just know what everybody's, especially for those first interactions, time of the essence. I know even in every company, there's, they're trying to go through a lot of different resumes and interactions in order to fill just a small number of roles a lot of times. So just be very intentional whenever you're putting out, whenever you do contact individuals, and be as concise as possible to get your message across. So again, I don't want to say short and sweet, but make sure it's concise to the point where you're getting your message across, but you're not, just know that your time is very precious as well. So just focus on those pieces.
A really good point. I found too that it can be super helpful to, in those initial communications, if you're setting up a time to talk or talk further, to have maybe 2 to 3 times that you're available. And then, yes, you can work around their schedule, but I would say as busy professionals that if so, I get why it happens because you're wanting to work around the schedule, but it puts more work on me if somebody says, hey, I'm available whenever you are. So then I have to look at my schedule and see, and then if you're not available, then we start playing email tag a little bit too. So yeah, good point about, just time being essential, be intentional, and be concise and precise with your communication. And then Terrence, what about personal social media accounts? Where does that fit into, whether it's these initial touch points with Handshake or a resume? Would you share personal social media accounts at this point or not?
If they're professional social media accounts, I would say yes. Like a LinkedIn profile, I would definitely say would be appropriate. I would probably stay away from like your Facebook and other type of social media accounts, unless they're completely business based or something, like you have a business account or something along those lines. Yeah, I mean, it's not much, even though people treat social media different than like your standard email etiquette and so on, but there's still a certain level of etiquette and professionalism that you need to have in those accounts. So, I mean, from the initial piece, I would just make sure that whatever you're looking to include, it's a proper representation of what you would want that person to see about you. So I think as long as it's in line with those items, and I think it's okay. But I think LinkedIn is probably the standard that I would include, just based on the information that they typically ask for, and how people use the platform. So yeah.
Great. Amanda, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. I think the only time I would say that you might want to include something personal social media wise would be if you are going for like some type of content creation role, where you're showing your social media posts, or showing that you, maybe if you had an internship where you got to run a boutique's Instagram post for 10 weeks during the summer, maybe something like that. But I would probably steer away from it. At the end of the day, if a company wants to see your personal social media, I'm sure they can find it. So I probably would steer away from it unless it really does serve a purpose, to Terrence's point. Or I have a friend who's in an industry where it's very normal for them to have accounts on social media designated to what they sell, right? And so that person, I'm sure she could share her business one, but I still don't think she'd be sharing her personal one. So I would say not unless asked, unless it does serve a great purpose.
And you bring up a really good point about that. If they want to find it, they could. And so just know that one of my favorite quotes from the Social Network movie from a few years ago now is that the internet is written in not pencil, it's written in ink. So just know that going in, when you post something that's out there, and be aware of your privacy settings and things like that. So even if you're not sharing it directly with the employer, the majority of employers do vetting and look for and do a digital audit of your background. And so it's helpful to Google yourself to see what's coming up. So if there is anything out there that you can get taken down that you don't want, or maybe you weren't aware of, to address that. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up too. Jeff, any last points on social media to kind of add in there?
Just to hammer that point on, is that you don't really have you can't control that. So you can not include it, but it doesn't really mean much. Everything you put out there, no matter how fast you delete it, how fast you think it's gone, how protected it is, it's all out there for everyone to see all the time. So just, I have a teenage daughter, just keep reminding her, to be appropriate in what you post, right? So yeah, that's gonna be interesting. That wasn't something I had to deal with when I was growing up. So, I as a hiring person, I don't intentionally go out seeking that. But if something did come across my desk that was questionable, that would impact me in my hiring decision for sure.
Definitely, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you're right. I mean, it's kind of even within the last 5 to 10 years, a newer area in terms of something to just be thinking about and be aware of. So, one of the ways you can use Handshake to prepare for events or even applications is to do research. So you can learn about the company's profile, and talk to us a little bit, Jeff, about why that matters once you go beyond the initial application with somebody and have that first conversation, whether it's at a networking event or even an interview. Why does that matter when somebody's, they've taken the time to really learn about their company? How does that impact you and your perception when you have that conversation with them?
Yeah, to me, that's an immediate decision point for me. If someone shows up to an interview not prepared, not knowing who we are or what we do, very hard to get past that in my eyes. Ally and Emira's company and our company, I mean, there's tons of information out there. You spend 15 minutes before a call just looking at LinkedIn and looking at website, doing some press release searches out there. Just have a couple of questions, right? I mean, something has to be interesting about what they're doing. And so to me, that's critical, that you come prepared knowing about who we are and what we do. Now, if it's a mixer and you've never heard of me, that's one thing, right? But if you are coming in as an person to get interviewed, I do 100% expect you to come prepared, because again, if I'm going to hire you and put you on projects, I want you to be prepared for the projects. I'm viewing your interactions as how would you work for my company, and is that the actions and behaviors I'd want to have on my team.
Yeah, really good points. And going beyond Handshake too, right? So, I mean, Google News is a great resource if you're looking at startups like Jeff's company, Crunchbase, or other resources that are startup specific that have details about the organization. So really do your homework in advance. And the great thing about that is that I find working with people over the years that the more that you clarify what the organization and their values and interests are about and how that aligns with your goals and interests, the more excited you're going to get. And so you're probably going to bring even more enthusiasm into the conversation. And that'll be really clear going in, which also really matters as well. Well, I guess at this point, so we're starting to wind down and want to really talk about last takeaways. So Terrence, I know we talked about a lot of things today, obviously, but last takeaways that you want folks to really go away with today about our conversation about Handshake?
Yeah, I know the theme was Handshake, but I think the larger theme we've been talking about is being your authentic self, because Handshake in itself is just a tool, right? So it's really just a means to help sell and present yourself in a certain kind of way. So just think through what you want the tool to do for you, and how you can use that tool in order to get you where you're like, what you're trying to, do with the tool. So I always just, I think we mentioned earlier professionalism. So always make sure you keep that within the tool. This isn't your private social media account that we were just kind of talking about earlier. So yeah, you just always just use it for that exact reason. So just let Handshake be the tool to help tell your story. That's my my summary that I would put in there.
That's a great last point. Great tagline, the tool to tell your story, for sure. And to Mohammed's point in the chat, so he appreciate you linking a checklist, really nice checklist from UPenn on Handshake that goes through kind of step-by-step different things to think about. And we have some similar resources on our website too. So definitely check out our handouts and different career resources at careers.unc.edu. But that's a nice infographic that really outlines how you can use Handshake as a tool to tell your story, as Terrence is saying. Amanda, last words, last thoughts in terms of takeaways you want to share?
Yeah, I think the main word that it kept coming to my head based on the things I heard and even the things I said, which is just be intentional, right? I think that you have a ton of opportunities right now. I'm assuming the majority of you are still college students. So with that in mind, be intentional about the organization you're joining. Be intentional about the internships or the jobs or the externships or the projects you're involved in or the roles you're playing in them. Be intentional in those, and then translate that same intentionality to your Handshake, to your profile, to your LinkedIn, to your resume. Just that bigger intentionality, I think, is going to serve you a ton of great purpose. And then translating that to some of the other things we talked about, and being intentional with your communication with employers, whether that is through your Handshake, your resume, or even in your email is your communication with them. It's all going to be a short amount of time and everything's going to go by so quickly, even those 4 years you're in college, if you're a first year student, or maybe 5, who knows, but be really intentional with it. And that's what's going to make a huge difference.
For sure. And Jeff, last words to you.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything that's been said. You just survived a global pandemic, right? I mean, it's a big deal, right? So everyone went through it differently. You all were in school trying to navigate working at home, or school at home, being on campus, flying home, being there. Don't hide behind that. I mean, if I was interviewing you, I'd want to hear your COVID story, right? How did it impact you? How have you grown? What did you learn during that process? So again, yes, I love to see the high GPAs and the great colleges and the internships. All that stuff's great, and activities and all that stuff. But again, don't be authentic, right? Be yourself, and make sure that you put out there the best version of yourself, because I believe that the version you put out there is what people are going to be drawn to. So if you put something out there that's not you, you're probably going to go someplace that's not what you like, right? So really just try to be that way as best you can.
That's said it better, Joe.
For sure. I mean, all of you is a great way to connect our conversation and really share important points. And like y'all have said, yes, we're talking about Handshake, but it really goes beyond that, because Handshake is just one way that we're telling our story, and the resume is another, and those are just ways to impart that information. And so, yeah, this pandemic is a part of that story, and reflecting on what that looks like for you. Like you said, Jeff, it's going to be different for everybody. So as we're closing, for our panelists, if you'd like to put your information, contact information in the chat, you can. This would be a good time to do that if you want to continue the conversation for folks. And I'm also putting in a very brief survey to fill out about this session. Please go ahead and fill that out now to our students in the audience. That really helps us to understand what is working well about these sessions, what folks are getting out of it, and then things that we can do differently as well. We've been doing virtual panels for, I guess, 18 months or something like that now. And so while we'll continue to do some form of hybrid work going forward, we will eventually be coming back to in person. So interested to hear about the virtual format in those surveys as well. Well, yeah, thank you again to our panelists. Thank you, Jeff, Terrence, and Amanda. Y'all were fantastic. Really appreciate you taking the time today. And thank you to our students for taking the time out of your busy day, especially coming off of fall break last week. And yeah, so look for the recording that'll be posted on our YouTube site. And then actually tomorrow we have a career fair event. So if you're looking for internships or full-time positions, this is another great opportunity. Our mid-semester career fair that's happening tomorrow afternoon. And like I mentioned, if you're interested in startups, the internship meet and greets are November 4th and November 10th, and you can find that information at Innovate Carolina. So a lot of things going on, but anyway, enjoy the conversation today. Thank you again, and we'll end the recording at that point. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.
And panelists, if you could just stay